M. The Media Project. With fast-moving and sweeping changes to our economy in the works, we all need to reconsider how our investments are best placed. At Partners in Housing, we believe your money is best placed locally. Utilized to increase value and provide stable and desirable housing to your neighbors. Contact Partners in Housing to find out how you can participate in local housing opportunities by joining the Partners in Housing Fund. Look us up at partnersinhousingvt.com or email us at partnersinhousingvt@gmail.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are with us again for another Are We Here Yet podcast. I am your host, as always, Scott M. Graves. Happy to be here on this evening. You know, for several years now, I've been trying to get more representation from my neck of the woods up here in New England, from the farthest western reaches of the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm, of course, talking about Berkshire County, and I got lots of friends there, but, you know, just as luck would have it, or bad luck, I guess, over the years, it was difficult to get people scheduled for the podcast. But here we are in season 12, and not one but two of my good friends have been able to come on. Soon you'll be hearing from one of them. And tonight we're talking to, of course, the most important one. I'm, of course, talking about Jenny Wright. Presently,
we want to edit that out in
partnership.
post.
And here we are laughing. I totally messed up the intro, but seriously, Jenny, how are you doing this evening?
I am great, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for that.
I'm glad
intro.
I'm glad I recently had a chance to meet you in person, and you're formerly working for MassMocha before this, right?
Yes. I worked for MassMocha from 2017 through the end of 2023.
Very cool, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that wonderful institution
Absolutely.
later on in the conversation. We just were sort of figuring out things out here a few moments ago, and we're talking about the 2030 plan. North Adams, Massachusetts has a 30-year plan that is in some stage of the 30 years now. And we talked about its importance to you. I'd like you to express that for our listeners. I think there's some value there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put this whole thing into context here, because when I was working at MassMocha, the last thing on earth that was on my mind was the city's comprehensive plan. I mean, I don't even live in North Adams. Full disclosure, I'm a total carpetbagger. I live in Pittsfield. So I would commute to the parking lot of MassMocha. I'd go to work in an art museum, do art museum things, and was not at all aware of or involved in, any sort of municipal activity until late in 2022, when the Reconnecting Communities pilot was launched. And all of a sudden, all these people from all corners of everywhere who had ever been, involved with MassMocha were like, hey, you guys need to look at this. And ultimately, we ended up partnering with the city to apply for that grant to study the overpass, which chops the city in half. MassMocha being on the north side, the city's on the south side. And nobody in a million years expected that we would get it. And we did. North Adams was the smallest city in the country to receive that grant. I think there were 42 recipients in 2022. So it was a big deal. And it was a moment of like, oh my God, what an amazing, oh crap, what do we do now? Like, it was just a sort of unconventional partnership between an art museum and a municipality to study this bridge that's been dividing the city since it was built in the 50s. So anyway,
just sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Text for our listeners who don't understand the reference because they haven't been to North Adams. It is not the largest of the most profane urban renewal projects in Massachusetts from our past, but it is remarkable in that, as you have aptly put, um, it completely bifurcated the city, right, at that
Yep.
time, separated, basically just what is that? Just west of downtown proper, I think. Is that west or north of downtown proper?
Right. It's west.
It's
It
west. Okay.
comes in from the west, and it expands to 4 lanes. And then when you're out the other side of North Adams, it goes back to 2 lanes. And apparently it's the only spot where Route 2 goes to 4 lanes. So it's just firing you out the other side of North Adams as quickly as
Right. You ever wanted to deplete foot traffic in a downtown from your visitors, where they don't even have to really visit, really. They can just pass on.
right.
This is a great way to do it, right? And this was considered progress at one point. But
Sure.
that's not where we are now. 2022, the city wins the award for funding for the 2030
Yeah.
plan. Continue on.
So as I was putting that grant application together, and this is something that, again, I have less than zero experience with federal grants. And so everyone was telling me, Jenny, you can't just sit down on a weekend and write a federal grant application. They are insanely complicated. They're very long. You got to get TA, you got to look at the NOFO, and it's just all this like jargon and acronyms. It was really difficult learning curve. But what I discovered is this comprehensive plan, and in the plan, it says this overpass is a problem. It should really be removed. It says it categorically. And I thought, what a great thing. What a great thing to have a plan that is owned by the city, that was a result of 3 years of community engagement, where people from all walks of life contributed their thoughts, feelings, history, stories to this thing, and documented, what they wanted from their city. And that was one of the things. There was a definitive statement in that plan. And I just started thinking, gosh, what else is in here? And so, it's a whole roadmap, and it's dense. It's not easy to get through. There are not a lot of nice charts, but it was a great tool for me to discover as somebody very new to all of this, because it charts a course for the city's future. And like you were saying, when you have 2-year political cycles, it's impossible to just keep this fresh in your mind at all times when you have, crisis after crisis popping up. But the fact that the city has it, and it's, through 2030, so it was realistically a 15-year comprehensive plan. But the city has accomplished a lot. And one of the things for me that would be really valuable to a community that needs a little confidence boost is to just go through and say, hey, look at all the things we've done so far.
It's part of the magic of those plans, right?
Right. They're designed to be there when you need them. Yeah. And so, all of the grants that the city has applied for, everybody in the community uses it in order to pull the language to apply for grants. But when it comes to actually kind of grounding ourselves in what do we want this place to be, it's all there. Someone's just got to sort of take the lead and implement it and see it through.
There are two examples that immediately come to mind as I'm hearing you talk. One is the city of Lowell, also in Massachusetts, in the Merrimack Valley, several hours east of you. The other is Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville's in Greenville County, and it's in what they call the Upcountry in South Carolina. It's a Route 85 corridor, but sandwiched between Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta. And these two cities not only had a successful 20 or 30-year plan, but they actually then had multiple. Based on the success of a first one, they had other 20 or 30-year plans. And I believe in both cases, they might even be in some iteration of yet another 20 or 30-year plan today. This goes back 40 plus years for both cities. I'm wondering now what made them successful in part was the way that the city absolutely consistently kept the parameters of the plan in the mind's eye of as many citizens, as many stakeholders as they possibly could, consistently throughout the decades of each plan or the years of each plan.
Mm-hmm.
Hardest thing to do. And you just mentioned electeds, not to pick on our elected officials at the municipal and state level, but the fact of the matter is, whether they want to or not, they're forced in a lot of ways to think short term because they have to
Sure.
think in election cycles, right?
Right.
And which sometimes can be a good thing. In fact, it depends on timing, right, with a plan. But I'm just wondering where your city stands in that regard, right? Is this the kind of thing that is in the mind's eye of people? If it's not, what are the challenges? What are you doing about it? Where does this sort of idea stand for you?
Well, I think since I've gotten involved in this, and again, I don't live here and have just very recently gotten involved in this work. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when the city won this Reconnecting Communities grant, the Vision 2030 plan, I mean, I made sure to put that in every single, speech that I wrote for, the mayor to say at press events and for the director of Mass MoCA when I was writing comments, make sure you reference this Vision 2030 plan, because when you're looking at the Venn diagram of all the stuff that happens in a city, that's right at the center. And if we can tether the work that we're doing to that, it's a sort of agnostic plan that represents the best of everything that we're doing. So what happened after that is that other community groups and organizations took note, and I'm sure, a lot of them were already using the plan, but in terms of referencing it at city council meetings, referencing it, on their websites, it started to bubble up in the public imagination, I think, a little bit more than it was. And even there was one moment in a city council meeting shortly after they got the grant, and a city councilor said, "What is this 2030 plan? Nobody ever uses that. Nobody ever talks about it." And there was real dissent from just people in the peanut gallery saying, "I use that thing all the time. Like, I read it cover to cover. It's at the library. You can check it out." And so there were just people from the community who picked this up and thought, like I did, what a great thing that the city has. What vision to be able to put this in place. And now we can use it because it belongs to us too. And so it's been helpful. And I try to be a broken record about it because, again, it's not something that's just a light beach read. It is pretty dense. But my organization, again, I was appointed executive director just last October. And I've taken 6 points from this plan, 6 points to sort of help structure the strategic plan for my organization, which focuses on economic development. And I think that's kind of the way to do it. Everybody's got a part to play. This is not a thing that should sit on a mayor's desk for her or him to implement by themselves. This is a plan for the community to kind of pull itself up and move forward. And so I think everybody should have a copy of this, or a sort of executive summary at least, sitting on their desk to say, like, "Oh, you know what? Today I'm gonna tick off this box," because I don't know what other way there is to achieve a future for a city if everybody's not pulling together in a sort of general direction.
And understand, yeah, it understands that there is a general direction to go in, and then
Yeah.
also that you go from, what are the principles of the people who live here? What are the general principles of our ideas for how we can redevelop our city? And then from there, figure out, what do we do 5 years from now? What do we do a year from now? What do we do 6 months from now? What do we do 90 days from now? Who's going to do
Yep.
what? How are we going to delegate things? So it's always that a good first important step. And the first step in that is getting the city consistently engaged with parameters of the plan, right? And understanding how we are moving forward and measuring it together, right? So we agree on that. I wonder, so with that said, North Adams, like a lot of our cities and towns here in the Northeast, there are parts to play in a plan like that that we lack. We lack the personnel. We lack the people for those things. One I'm thinking in many cities are just, developers, right? Who's gonna redevelop our commercial spaces and rethink them? Who's gonna, even if we have the money to do it, who's gonna build the housing? Who's, all of this kind of stuff. And I wonder, since coming on board with your organization, what are those places that Northampton, maybe first we'll talk about what it needs more of.
Well, so that's the thing that I've noticed, and it's really difficult to see in North Adams. It can be difficult because we have this global entity, this huge cultural institution smack in the middle of downtown. There's not, the perception is that there's not a lot of incentive to go downtown because it means people are going to be walking past the cars that they parked. And after having walked 5 miles or whatever it is to see all of Mass MoCA, the expectation is that, tourism would revitalize the downtown once Mass MoCA was up and running. But it's a lot to ask of people to visit a downtown that they can't see. So my approach, again, just as a newcomer, is to really, my office is overlooking Main Street. My office was once on Mass MoCA's campus. Now I'm here on Main Street. And I spend time downtown and I can see the little gravitational centers. And it's so fragile. It is such a fragile ecosystem. But man, when you're at a place and you see people and you're having really good coffee and really good scones or really good croissants or whatever, and there's a scene and there are people having their meetings, you want to kind of take a snapshot and say, like, this is what we need, because it's people from all walks of life coming to these little spots. And, we had chicken tenders at the Eagle Street Cafe, and there are like 3 vacant storefronts between the Eagle Street Cafe and the next little cafe, which is Steeple City, which is another scene. And these are good places, and people will find them because their products are good. So I guess for me, it's a matter of like, how do we uplift those things that are already working, support the people who are putting their necks on the line to try to create something while activating these dead spaces that separate them. Because it doesn't matter how good your, cheeseburger is. If you're the only game on the street, it's going to be really difficult to get people to go there. And so
What changes? You've brought up some interesting things in conversation here. One being, that we sometimes we have an over reliance on, that big anchor institution that's going to, that either is in town or we enhance it or where we bring them to town. Mass MoCA is a great example. And even if you take down the elevated highway, like, it's not like that alone is going to revitalize across the street, right?
Exactly.
You need more than it's never any one business, one entity, one institution, right? That's going to just change everything. It's a lot to ask of any group of people, small group of people running an institution. Is it so? I'll ask this: do you need more people coming to your destination, or do you need more people living in close proximity that becomes the impetus for all that additional business to be sustained?
I think it's well, I think it's both. It's both, and of course, that's the answer to everything. But it's also the connection of them, because that is the other thing for me. I mean, I don't know that you can expect a downtown to thrive if nobody lives there. I mean, if all of your stores are located, within like a 2-block area, but you're not living there. They need daily customers. They need people who are going to go there every day. So yes, people need to live there. But the other thing too is that, North Adams has a college right downtown.
Right.
You would never know. You would never know there was a college there. You would never know there's faculty. There's Williams College just in the next town over, and you wouldn't know that. And so I think having a strategy that is holding people's hands and bringing them downtown, but also connecting these resources that are already here.
What's population, by the way, of the college, and why did they come downtown? I mean, what's the relationship like as far as foot traffic goes? Like, is there
it's light to non-existent, and there are events where MCLA students will come to, like if there's a show at Mass MoCA, or if there's a student band playing somewhere, or if there's a sort of incentive. But North Adams doesn't have like a dive bar, or just the place where the students hang out. And I know that MCLA students, a lot of them are commuters, a lot of them work a couple of jobs, and so there's a lifestyle that they don't have any free time. And so having a leisurely stroll to North Adams is not necessarily realistic. But in terms of supporting their housing needs and the things that they do from day to day, there's just not that connection. One of the things that the city has worked on is to revitalize the street, Ashland Street, that kind of is the anchor or the connector between MCLA and downtown. But I think that the thing that's missing, in my opinion, is just the handholding of like, let's create something for these people specifically that they co-create with us, and let's go there and bring them to it and make them feel welcome in this place, introduce them around. I mean, it's kind of what you have to do when you have these disconnected resources.
That brings to mind, I won't name the city, because I'm not interested in embarrassing them in any negative way. But years ago, I participated in the development of a co-working facility at an old theater, and there was some mixed use on the first floor, commercial pads. There was various economic development programs taking place, and there was a connection to the local university. It's 10 blocks from the university, so quite a distance,
Mm-hmm.
But they were hoping this would be a sort of Western anchor to get a lot more students to come, downtown proper. And of course, one opportunity to have them participate with any of the other businesses along that 10 blocks.
Right.
In the end, it never really took off because the university could never find it in their budget to have any sort of transportation.
Yep,
This is
exactly.
New England, right? So like, it's going to get cold, it's going to rain, it's going to, and,
Mhm.
and also kids have a schedule, right? So if I'm taking an actual class at the co-working facility,
Yep.
my next class, I've got 20 minutes to go from there to the back to college.
Exactly.
And I remember being like, so it seems to me, guys, that if we just add like, a bus, or could we get a
Jitney, shuttle, yeah.
right? I had a similar thing happen in my current home state, Vermont, at a state college here that we were doing some work with, because in this case the incubator was 3.5 miles from the college campus, and the college campus was deep in a little mountain vale type thing,
Okay.
elevated right above the town, and that was the number one thing, was just was just hard, especially in cold weather months, for students to go 3.5 miles each way. And no one was like, oh yeah, we just don't have the budget to do, like the transportation thing or anything. It's like some of the disconnects we're talking about to enact more of your plan are often these like,
Yeah.
how can this be the insurmountable reason why this doesn't happen?
Right. And it's just the lack of connection. So they're probably not looking at this as like an economic catalyst for the city next door. It's just like, it's a bus we didn't put in the budget, whatever. It's one bus.
Collectively, right? Because
yeah, absolutely.
And those people are downtown, and then this other small situation gets ameliorated, and then now there's that group coming downtown.
Mhm.
And pretty soon it's like, wow,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and it's one of those things too, like Berkshire County doesn't have a county government. There's no Pittsfield is the county seat, but there's not like a county-wide sort of entity. Berkshire Regional Planning is the closest thing that we have to that. And they do a great job of looking at things like that and seeing how they can kind of pilot something somewhere and then implement it in other places. And that's one of the things that they're looking at right now, finally, is a microtransit program that they piloted in South County. But again, it's like one of the things that I hear all the time about these seemingly very obvious solutions that aren't being implemented is that people say, well, it's no one's job. Like, whose job is that? It's got to be someone's job. And it's like not someone's job to implement, microtransit. So BRPC is taking that on because there's such a demand for it. But, it is one of those things that it's helpful to sort of be a generalist in some of these areas because they're all connected. There's nothing that's not connected. And when you start retreating into your silo, then you're creating the same, stasis that's killed us for the last few decades.
Driven by data. Driven by technology. driven by community development, driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates, delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
Now I know that because we first met recently because by invitation I was happy to be in town looking at some properties. I you know so I'm going to guess a primary part of your job is interesting developers, other people who are interested in property development of various kinds to come and take a look at town. Where does that stand actually? I mean, so many deindustrialized communities just don't have the capacity anymore, like they might have in prior decades. There isn't 50 small or medium to large scale developers right in town.
Right.
All ready to go, all staged and capitalized, and so what does that look like for you?
Well, right now, my priority is focusing on what we have. Who owns the properties? How long have they had them? What are their plans? Are they on track with their plans? What are they missing? And you can't do that without sitting down and talking to people and building trust, because nobody has to talk to me about anything. I mean, this job that I have is sort of a pilot in and of itself. It's like, let's give this a shot for a while and see if we can make a go of it. But before I'm even thinking about bringing in new, I really want to have relationships and a thorough understanding of what we have in place right now. Who's ready for a buyer? Who needs to be connected with funding that they didn't know existed? Who needs to kind of tweak their vision for the property? And who needs to just have some urgency created? Because a lot of these property owners are not full-time North Adams residents. And so if no one's lighting a fire under them to activate their building, it's like, well, I got a property in New York and, people are screaming about this or that. And I have this thing, it's on fire and I'm looking at that investment. And it just becomes not a priority. It becomes kind of a fun side project that they'll get to whenever they get to. And so really kind of disentangling who's serious, who's not serious, who's this kind of a hobby for, because the sum total effect is that they're holding downtown hostage. I mean, through no fault of their own, without bad intentions. But when you have even two giant historic buildings that could have 150 families living in them that have been vacant for decades, it does something to the psychology of a community when you walk past it day in and day out and you just assume, well, nothing's going to happen with this.
Right.
I'm too new to accept that as an option. Like, that's unacceptable to me. So I want to understand what is happening, because in some cases, folks are self-financing these projects and taking years to restore them. And, stuff's happening, but it's behind the scenes and nobody knows. And so part of that is starting to build trust with these people, know who they are, know what their plans are, how far along are they, and then understanding, are any of them, or who is at the right stage to really broker a meeting with the city and say, you know what, this is in the 40R district. Let's look at this as a 40R project and see if we can accelerate that. It's not everyone. I mean, not everyone is ready to go with their project. But I think that's where I've started, because you would think like, well, we could just partner with the city and maybe like acquire some property and launch a thing. And everything is, I mean, as you know, insanely complicated. Nothing is that straightforward. And so
yeah, that's right. Part of it is our zoning and ordinance landscape. Part of it is just the way we finance things. You know what I mean? Because you'll have those folks that are basically self-financing and taking a long time, right? They're really working in good faith and with competency.
Yep.
Taking a long. I mean, I feel you.
But the reason that people
unless
don't
dealing with this that are in development that would like it's like it always is in life. Those of us that want the most community development, bottom up sort of driven, oriented, yeah. But we don't finance that in the United States.
Yeah,
You know, if you
exactly.
want me to build you 60 some odd, single family homes on acreage in a cul-de-sac, I might even get subsidy to build that, but if well, we're gonna transform this downtown. It's gonna be just like it was in 1920, if from a density standpoint. And people are
Hmm.
like, that's nice, and we understand why that makes sense, but we don't lend for that.
Right.
We don't give grants for that. We don't do this for that. We don't do that for that. And you just like it takes forever. I
And that's the thing that kills North Adams is that you can't charge the rent that you would need to in order to recoup the investment. And so you can see there's a lot of development happening in Pittsfield right now and Point South. But
Yep.
when you start to go north, you just can't charge those same market rate rents. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm learning these acronyms as I go, but the naturally occurring affordable housing where the market rate rent in North Adams is actually kind of on par with what is considered affordable, capital A. Um, so yeah, whenever people are looking at North Adams who want to invest, they always say, well, I can't, I'm not going to make that back.
So speaking of both the vestiges of urban renewal and what that did to North Adams and housing at the same time, and another subject we're going to talk about, which is parking.
Oh boy.
We talk about urban mythologies 101. So on at least on par in my personal opinion of the elevated highway in your wonderful city is the area just behind Main Street to the east, which if I had to guess, I don't have pictures of what it once was prior to urban renewal. I'm going to guess it was a number of small neighborhoods, a mix of both housing and maybe commercial. But
You're talking about the big parking lot.
I'm
That's
talking about
there
the
now.
big parking lot. So for the
The
folks
south.
that are listening that have not been there, it is. I recently walked this area with One Berkshire's Ben Lamb, and when we say this is a big parking lot, you look at this area, which is is a mall, which is now a relatively underutilized mall. But prior to that, this was multi-story buildings. It was single-family homes. It was like a whole other section of the city, right?
Yep.
There could have been, if you said to me, oh, the 800 residences there and there were 150 businesses, I would totally believe you. There could be even
Hmm.
more, right? It's a large area.
It's huge. Yeah.
And I look and I go, wow, because when I think of urban renewal and it's not so nice consequences, I always think, and your city, I always think of what you hit it right on, like that, the elevated highway is like, oh yeah, it just like takes everybody out of downtown. You just avoid downtown entirely. But
Yep.
but that's another one where I go, wow, who thought this was a good idea?
Well, it's really heartbreaking to look at before and after photos of what it was and then what it became after urban renewal. And in North Adams, it happened sort of in two phases. There was the 50s overpass construction, which got rid of Center Street, which ran parallel to Main Street, which was equally busy. I mean, there were city blocks and corners and mixed use buildings, and there were 205 families, 35 businesses that were wiped out, relocated, displaced in order to make room for that, you know, that overpass and the parking lots that went with it. And then in the 70s was the leveling of the south side of Main Street. And it was like those buildings were having conversations with each other for 100 years or whatever. I mean, it was all up and down Main Street. There were mirror images. It's unrecognizable when you look at historic photos. It does not look like the same place because it was just, they leveled the entire south side of the street. And I mean, when you go back, so I spent the day early on at the North Adams Public Library just going through the physical newspaper clippings from that era to really understand how on earth did this happen? What was the pitch? Like, why did they do it? And the headline was just to make way for new things, that there was going to be some amazing magical developer that would swoop in and create all kinds of new things.
That wonderfully and sometimes unfortunately destructive American sort of modicum of the march of progress.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, honestly,
totally good or bad, but we are moving forward, folks.
And we still do it. It's this like Silicon Valley-fication of the way we think about what success looks like or what leadership looks like. It's like, we're going to start at 1 billion users. How do we get to 1 billion? Like, that's just the starting point out of the gate. But when they were looking at the south side of Main Street, there were blighted tenement buildings that were really dangerous for people. They didn't have indoor plumbing in a lot of cases. So there were like legitimate reasons to take some of these things down. But there were also glorious bank buildings that were not meant to ever come down.
Well,
And it just went,
I
wholesale.
think many members of my family, French Canadian immigrants in Lowell, as an example, urban renewal took Little Canada because same reason, right? Oh, these are all water flats. They're tenements, right? They're triple deckers.
Yep.
Get rid of them. We don't need that. And it is true. They were cold water, really raw, buildings in a lot of cases. That having been said, why didn't somebody during urban renewal say, "Oh, well, we're going to build this vibrant neighborhood just like it is now, except the buildings are going to be better"? You know what I mean? Like, there's any number of other things that we could have done,
Right.
but instead we built for car culture.
Yep.
Because that was going to be the future.
That was the shiny new thing. Yeah.
The shiny new thing, right? Everyone's going to have a car and they're all going to live in the suburbs. And, so all we got to do is really get people in and out of here fast so they can get to their real homes. And, the city suffered and everything. But, so here we are now. And I'm just, excited to hear the language you're using around what you're trying to do is, it's very hopeful and it's very encouraging and, makes all of us feel good,
Well, like I said, I haven't found a way to get around the one-on-one building relationships with people aspect of it, because I think I get so my skin crawls when I start to hear that sort of like, oh, if only a big developer would come in and do a thing. And then there was the Tom Krenz debacle and that I can't even talk about because it's just so toxic.
Okay, let me ask you about stuff like that. Is this going to happen with small, numerous, real, neighborhood driven projects, or are you looking for, that in a combination, or is it really about, some of the larger scale development to get started? What is, I guess, really what I'm asking is, what does the plan, the 2030 plan focus on?
So there's a combination of missing teeth. So there are buildings that are kind of beyond fixing to go in and surgically remove some of those. Looking at city-owned municipal lots that are sort of sprinkled in neighborhoods where new homes can be built. There was actually a program in the 90s called the Housing Opportunity Initiative that the city ran really successfully to help first-time homebuyers. And it was basically they would take on a property that needed repair and they would fix it up, and then they would partner with a bank to do a favorable terms for first-time homebuyers.
Nice.
And that was, again, there are things that have worked in the past, but it's a combination of that, the sort of incremental neighborhood development, connecting people with the ability to be able to combat blight in their neighborhoods, but also looking at big downtown buildings, concentrating on artist housing, student housing, senior housing that really connects with the needs assessment. That is also a great study that's been done to identify the opportunities. Like we have everywhere, we have seniors who are aging in place in ways that are not desirable or safe. They have way too much square footage and would love to have smaller place. So it's those kinds of things. But what it doesn't do is advocate necessarily for MassMocha 2.0. I mean, it really does kind of get to a hyper specific level, neighborhood by neighborhood, and talk about how can we start to do this with the resources that we have in order to then introduce people to a North Adams that's on the upswing, because we've built it up. So it certainly had a vision and described a vision of the new North Adams that's powered by the creative economy. It's powered by, artists adjacent to MassMocha, but not necessarily directly connected to Massamoka, but the creative economy was going to be the future of North Adams, and it's it's pretty explicitly throughout that plan.
What does that population look like? Like, because you guys have room to grow, which is not at all a bad thing. I mean, especially with all, if you can spur on a lot of this new development. I love the idea of multiple target markets, right? You understand
Yeah.
that community is all people of all ages, right? Socioeconomic backgrounds, stages of life. That's a vibrant community, right? So to get all of that, though, you could have a pretty hefty population increase, and it's really just returning the city back to prior census tracks, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also understanding what it is today that draws people to North Adams. And I have an intern from Williams right now who's doing this kind of oral history project and interviewing people who are kind of self-identified as part of the creative economy. Many of them who've moved here since the pandemic, and asking the question, what brought you here? What keeps you here? What are the physical spaces that you go to find community, to understand what that narrative is? Because clearly something's happening. We have Greylock Works that's popped up in recent years,
Yeah.
tourists. And then we have this great little Eagle Street strip that, it's where we had lunch. And, they're the ones that drive the First Friday celebrations. And this incredible artist community, people just make it happen. And it's a very small, very fragile ecosystem. But what I'm interested in is building a vocabulary around that, being able to talk about it,
Yeah.
and being able to talk aspirationally about it so that other like-minded people can come here for those reasons. Because when something happens organically and it's working and people love it and people respond to it, but you don't know, it's just this je ne sais quoi. And if you're not in, you don't know, because, it's a hard, there aren't a lot of those third spaces where people just gather and do stuff and hang out. And one of the things that was really interesting, I was talking to a group of Williams students recently. One of them said, "We've heard so much about North Adams. It's this great, like, creative community. So, like, where are the artists? Where are they?" And they were just like looking to see them. They can see the public art, but without those sort of hubs of, there, a couple of restaurants have opened recently where people tend to gather, but if you don't know, you don't know. It's one of those things that we really start to kind of have to talk more confidently about so that we can position North Adams in that way, because the people who have found it and who have started building things are doing it really, really well. And there's a lot to be learned from what that community is doing, but we have to support it and understand it, and then be able to talk about it and build that vocabulary, because we definitely know how to talk about scarcity and trauma and deficit and poverty. Like, we're so good at that.
And we
But
should
there's this,
avoid the hard conversations, right? But we have to then back that up with, hey,
it's
here's a couple of solutions, man,
it's not to say that it isn't true. It is all valid and urgent and true. And there are these great things that are sort of coming out of that are worth understanding. Why is this happening? Why is there this growing pocket of people who don't see North Adams as a dying city? They see it as this incredible place that they're so happy that they found. I'm interested in learning about why that is and what we can do to grow something that's already working.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I know you're a big advocate for building more parking lots. So I'd like you to
Love parking lots.
Love-
They keep us warm.
We were talking earlier offline in preparation for the interview that, the mythologies, right? The two big ones, parking. The other one is, I don't want new people to move to my town because the increased use of school by their kids, and young people and young families moving to town are going to increase my property taxes, right? We'll put that aside for a minute, but the parking one, lots of parking in your community. There could be less parking in certain areas, way more housing, and there'd still be plenty of parking for everybody. But I'd like to talk about it from the opportunity side, which is there's space now for new development, new build. So it's highly energy efficient. It's highly spatially efficient,
Mhm.
built with processes and materials that could be innovative and advantageous for both residents and for the people who long-term own the properties. And not a lot of communities can say, well, we have all the space we need to accommodate a new portion of our population, everybody who's already here, and to bring both the young and the old and various members of the various members of different classes within our community to live in close proximity, to walk amongst each other every day, which is vitally, vitally important, particularly, frankly, for the poorer people among us. When they start to be able to connect with people of influence and money who see, hey, she works hard and she's smart. She's written a couple of really good things I read in the paper. Let's help that person. These things don't happen. They seem to be happening by accident, but they're because of well-designed communities where people have access to one another.
Right. And, the perception is that everything is so far away. It's just so far to walk from here to MCLA or from here to Nara Sushi or something. And when I was still working at MassMocha, but I was starting to do this work, I said, I'm not gonna get in my car. Once I arrive in North Adams from Pittsfield, I park it and that's it. And everything's 5 to 7 minutes. Literally everything. I can walk everywhere I need to go. I can go to the grocery store. I can walk to City Hall. I can walk to MCLA. It's like 7 minutes max for the most part. And so I think that part of it is just like you're walking through these unpedestrian friendly spaces where there's just a ton of asphalt that doesn't have anything going on in it. I mean, these parking lots are not full, by the way.
No.
There was a Stantec study that was done. Sadly, tragically, it was published and shared on March 10th or March 12th of 2020. I think I was the only person there.
Wait,
it was like the day before the world closed.
Yes, I was going to say March 12th. I know because I lived in your state at that time. My first business incubator, we were going to have a check signing ceremony. We were taking in a major amount of money from a state agency. And I was getting ready. It's like super early in the morning, and they called. So you had a state of emergency declaration moment, it sounds like, on March.
Yep. And it was a great study. It was like a visionary parking study because it did all the things that, what's his name? We've all read the book that's 12,000 pages long about parking, the high cost of free parking.
Oh, yes.
But it incorporates all of that. It talks about, capitalizing on the times of day that people are in certain areas and shared parking. And it's just logical things that make sense. But even despite the fact that MassMocha has festivals, Solid Sound is a huge festival, there are 1,000 excess parking spaces on Solid Sound Day. 1,000.
1,000 on that day when you have 20,000 people?
The highest peak of parking, the highest peak of population in North Adams, there are still 1,000 too many parking spots. They're just located in places where you don't need to be ever.
Now, I heard a statistic about your city in that park, the aforementioned mall area.
Yeah.
Massive parking lot, acres and acres of parking. The most that parking lot has ever been utilized is at 60% capacity. So
I would be shocked
busy
that it was ever used at 60%.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. And so, it's like the idea that we're going to lose parking. But one of the things that's really interesting too about this overpass study, the firm that's working on it is, the community raised their hand and they spoke up, and they're pursuing the remove option, which would be remove the overpass. We don't need it. If North Adams was built today, it wouldn't be built with an overpass.
Yeah.
But what that does is it creates city blocks.
Yes.
It creates several blocks where you have street parking. And I can't remember the number, but it was a shocking number. And, we're looking at the grid with our eyes, and it creates opportunities.
And there will be a wonderful opportunity to create that interconnectivity that when you are a walker or a biker, you absolutely need, particularly when you're a walker. You know what I mean? Yep. That you have uninterrupted pedestrian infrastructure and it feels good. You're nestled in, and you like the rhythm of getting from one place to another feels right. It's just gonna make a huge difference for
absolutely. So really looking at that problem through the lens of parking was interesting because you're gaining more parking, oddly enough, in the places where you would want to have it. And then those lots can actually be buildings.
Yeah.
There's no reason to keep this lot precious for the one day of the year when somebody parks in it.
And the increase in property taxes will be just insane. You know what I mean? Because with that kind of organic growth,
Absolutely.
opportunity for development.
And, the argument is that you really need some kind of disruptive event to catalyze investment in the downtown. And having this thing gone and having 5 trees planted where it was just to get things started, to have sunlight, shine on that part of Marshall Street like it's never been done before, will just be transformative. And we've started to see some of the renderings of what that could look like. But you get used to stuff. You get used to parking lots being where they are. You get used to doing what you're doing. And it's hard to imagine something that you can't see until someone shows it to you and explains why. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's really true. We, when we're talking about our built environment, often things can get contentious. And I sense sometimes that it does, because it's all of us think differently, each as individuals. And so some of us, our natural inclinations to visualize things, visualize things in the future. For other people, that's not the first place that their mind goes to. It doesn't mean that they're somehow at a deficit intellectually. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think sometimes we forget to just remind each other in these conversations about the built environment that, hey, it's not easy for everybody to just naturally visualize what you're describing, right? So we need to, right? You need to describe it, but you also need to see it. And we need to have those conversations with great patience and great humility, between each other.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've noticed, I've run some community engagement sessions for the last 2 years, just kind of knocking on doors and going to bars and getting people involved in this. And every single person who joined these conversations had a point of view already, whether it was take it down or leave it up or this is ridiculous or whatever. A lot of them changed their minds, which shocked me. It shouldn't shock me. It just seems like something that you might expect someone to do, but I don't expect that of anyone these days. And people would join these conversations because they saw a conversation happening and they'd pull up a chair. And it was just, I said to the planning firm, I was like, whatever happens with the overpass, those conversations happened. That to me felt like a huge victory, just in terms of, looking at the potential of humanity's ability to sit down with each other and have a conversation and disagree respectfully about things. Because there were municipal employees who were absolutely dead set against touching this thing. Like, why on earth would we take this away? Who completely changed their minds and are now fully invested in the remove option. So it was good to see that we can still do that. But it's got to be in person. You can't do that from behind a keyboard.
It all starts with the basis of your plan, right? The 2030 plan, and just, there's common principles behind it. And it's a starting point for a conversation.
For sure. Yep.
Stuff. Jenny Wright, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
This was fun.
This is fun, isn't it? And I heard a rumor. This is you've done. This is your 100th podcast. Is that correct?
This is podcast number 2.
Number 2. You should be doing way more podcasts.
Yeah. Ask the last guy that I talked to.
You got to have your own podcast. You're really good at it. Seriously,
Well, thank you. I'm actually working on that. I'm thinking about it because I do like to have conversations. And to me, that's just what it all comes down to. So I'm really glad to be here and to talk with you about all this good stuff. And I learned so much.
Jenny Wright is the executive director of the North Adams Partnership. And before we say goodbye one last time, where can people find information about you and about the partnership and about the 2030 plan for North Adams?
NorthAdamsPartnership.org. The 2030 plan is smack dab in the middle of our homepage, so it's there for everyone to download and enjoy.
Very cool. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on the Are We Here Yet podcast.
Thank you so much.
SMG's Are We Here Yet podcast is a production of M the Media Project and SM Graves Associates. Learn more at smgravesassociates.com.